I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Derik Murray, one of the producers for the Apple TV Plus documentary Sidney, which tells the real life story of the actor, director, and activist Sidney Poitier, the first Black Best Actor Oscar winner, winning for Lilies of the Field in 1964. Derik, you were fortunate to have Sidney himself be part of this documentary, and hearing him tell those stories, it just brings it to a different level. What did that mean to have him be part of this?
Well, it's interesting, Denton, because he was a part of this right from the very beginning, because this began in 2018. Sitting such a great honor, sitting in his living room with Sidney and his wife Joanna, and talking about the prospect and the potential opportunity to work together to make this film, and the journey began shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, for all of us, Sidney passed before this movie, premiered, which would have been incredible to have him there with us. His family were there at the premiere at TIFF, which was extraordinary and so emotional, so profound. But he was definitely there at that premiere with us in spirit. Specific to the authenticity that you mentioned earlier about this film and Sidney's voice, we struck gold, quite frankly, Denton, because Oprah had done an interview with Sidney about a decade ago, where it was scheduled to be a couple of hour interview, and it became an inspired session that lasted more than 2 days, which ended up rendering 8+ hours of interview footage, just one-on-one with Sidney telling his story. And that content, which had never been seen before, a small portion of it aired once, a small portion of it. That content was instrumental in ensuring that his voice and his persona was right front and center in telling his story. And so, to your point, it was extraordinary to have him specifically take us on his journey.
What was sort of the catalyst of getting this started? And then how did you team up with Oprah, who's also a producer on this? What is that teamwork like? Working with Oprah, that has to be interesting.
Extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. I have said this over and over again, and she was truly our North Star throughout this production. I mean, the beautiful part about this film is there was a real commitment from the very beginning by everybody that was part of this film to make it a very authentic portrayal of this man. And as you said, to have him take us on this journey is extraordinary. But this is the beautiful part about Oprah, is that she had a long-term relationship, very strong personal relationship with Sidney. So not only did she admire him and he inspired her, but she just also brought this depth of knowledge, because she really had spent a lot of time with Sidney over the years. So to have her as that resource throughout, that North Star, was absolutely instrumental in making the movie that we're all now viewing and screening and sharing with the world. How it all came about, there's a certain amount of, serendipitous moments in every project that you take on, particularly of this size and scale and scope. And we had once it was agreed by the family that they we had been entrusted to tell Sidney's story. We had a mission in front of us to put together that team, right, to tell this story at the highest possible level. And I use the word trust. It's so important. And I was very fortunate that during the time that I spent with Sidney and Joanna, one of the films that I'd produced a few years back, working with Muhammad Ali and his wife Lonnie, was a film called Film is on Muhammad Ali, and it was called Facing Ali. And it was an extraordinary film. It was shortlisted for an Academy Award. Lionsgate was our partner, and it happened to be a film that Sidney and Joanna really loved. And so that was a really, a terrific entry point when we started talking about films and projects. But once we were on this, road together, embarking on this journey, we started to really look at, each and every one of the pieces of how to tell the story in the most, in the strongest possible fashion, with that elegance and grace that Sidney brought, as a person and on the screen. We looked at directors, and one of the things that we really knew right from the beginning was this was going to be a huge responsibility. Any director that was prepared to step in and tell the story of one of the most important, Hollywood icons of the 20th century and beyond, his influences beyond Hollywood, had to be able to have pretty strong shoulders. And this led us through a number of discussions. And when we sat down with Reginald, who I'd had the pleasure of meeting in the past and working with, not only was it apparent that he had a personal connection to Sidney and a vast knowledge and depth and an excitement and a passion for the project, but he knew what it meant. And it was clear to us that he could take this project on and carry the weight on his shoulders. So that was a nice tick in the box at that very beginning. We were very excited to add Reginald to the team and to bring him on as our director. And then it became, we were right in the throes, as I mentioned, this all started in 2018. Once Reginald was on board, we hit this a little bit of a wall, as we all did with the global pandemic. It didn't stop us, but it just kind of slowed it down a little bit. And so throughout that process, the team went into a lot of research and starting to bring archival content forward and really starting to just, kind of start to put together that beautiful mosaic of content that Reggie could rely on from an archival perspective. Then, of course, Sidney's, movies, his incredible interviews that he'd done all over the world, radio interviews, was extraordinary. And as we started to shape this together and we got deeper into the story and started to think about how we wanted to take this out, who would be the best possible partner, we also, of course, front and center started to talk about Oprah.
Yeah.
That was a call that we made. My partner, Brian Gersh, president of Network, made that call directly to Harpo Productions. The team there very quickly got us connected. And the next thing we found in summer 20, June 20, we were on a Zoom with Oprah, which, I don't know about you, but that's on my calendar every day, right? It's not on my calendar every day. And of course, we're all very excited. And it was, and she was amazing. The Zoom started, everything all of a sudden felt comfortable, and that was due to her and her persona and how she just relaxed the meeting. Reggie started talking about his vision for the film. We started talking about our commitment and the family's support. And within 15 minutes, Oprah just put up her hand and said, I'm in. I'm in. This is such an important story. I'm so proud to be part of it, and I'm in. And everything just moved quickly from there. The next thing we knew, within 3 to 4 weeks, we were in front of the top folks at Apple. And it was, and this was another extraordinary moment that doesn't happen every day, Denton. We are presenting the film, the prospect of the film, to the senior execs at Apple with Oprah, with Reggie, with myself and the team. And they were inspired. They couldn't help but, like all of us, they couldn't help but be inspired by Sidney's story. And to have, the vision of Reggie mapped out so clearly, and to have Oprah's support and also her own editorial commentary about Sidney and his importance and his life, it was literally, I don't know, this was on a Friday, and by Monday we're like, okay, this is going to be an Apple Plus production. So away we went. So that's the mechanics of it, mechanics and also just the glory of putting it all together. And of course, we found ourselves still in the pandemic. So now we're in the fall of 2020. And, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, so to speak, right? So away we went, and it was quite a journey. And as you've seen, we have an incredible cast. It was so important to put together an authentic cast, which we did. So important. And that cast were, undaunting in their, commitment of their time to make sure they were available for interviews as we were rolling through the next, 12 to 14 months.
And I was absolutely fascinated by stories of his youth, things that I had never heard before. How he grew up on Cat Island. He'd never seen a mirror before, how he discovered cars. I loved those stories because those are things I haven't heard. What surprised you the most about his upbringing and as you were watching this?
Well, I'm like you, and I'm sure many of the folks that screen our film, I was shocked by that. I was absolutely blown away. My first, I first met Sidney Poitier effectively when I was a 11-year-old boy in a movie theater, watching him up on the big screen with To Serve with Love. And I was completely blown away. He instantly became a hero to me, and I continued to follow his films and In the Heat of the Night, not too long after To Serve with Love. But honestly, he was a hero and he's an icon. And part of the motivation for this film is I couldn't actually believe that there wasn't a film of absolute significance on this man, this global icon. But as we got deep into the story, like you, I was his upbringing, where he came from, Cat Island. I personally, Cat Island wasn't on my, atlas of places that one needed to go. I had no idea where it was until we dug into it. Small island in the Bahamas, and then, as you said, the fact that he was, one of seven children. His mother and father were farmers, tomato farmers, and he came from such, my goodness, such a small world, and yet he learned at an early age. And we speak about this in the movie, he speaks about it in the movie, is that his parents were really the ones that set his moral compass, that really set him on that path to the journey, the journey and where it took him. And he relied on that moral compass over and over again in that journey.
When you were making the film and working with Sidney, do you think he fully grasped his own sort of cultural importance? Did he fully accept that within himself by the time he passed away, do you think?
I really couldn't answer that, Denton, to be truthful. I certainly spent time with Sidney, at the very beginning of this film, not over an extended period of time. I think this is a question that certainly Oprah would be better to answer, but I do believe that the most remarkable part about Sidney to me, in looking at the latter stages of his life, is he was incredibly open and invested in those around him as a mentor. He really did spend time within and outside the Black community and shared his time and his guidance, his mentorship with many. And I really felt that through the conversations and the interviews that Reggie did, there was never really an indication of a man that, really felt that he was on the top of the mountain and others were not. I think he really felt that he was on the top of the mountain with all of us. And I think that in everything that I've read and seen and absorbed through Oprah's stories and the cast, this was one extraordinary individual. And I do believe, you spoke about his origins from Cat Island. I think it all just flows right back to that beginning, where he came from and how committed he was in his path. I don't think there was anything that he ever took for granted.
And the film's up for a few Critics' Choice Documentary Awards, including Best Feature. What do awards recognition mean for, films, especially documentary films, and just sort of building that profile?
Well, what awards mean to myself and to my team at Network means that more people are going to be aware of this film. And that's really important to us. We make films that we, believe, in our heart and our soul are to inspire people. And this is talking about the top of the mountain. This is a film for us. It's at the top of the mountain. And it's a film that has an opportunity to inspire millions and millions of people. And it already has. I've seen this firsthand in the film festivals and from folks that have taken the time to text and write and call and talk about this incredible experience that they had with their family or with their son, with their daughter, with friends, watching Apple Plus and this film. And so to me, the more we can shine a light on this film, whether that's the awards, the time you're spending with me today, the more we have a chance to inspire millions. And quite frankly, Sidney deserves that. His story needs to be told and needs to be shared because it is so relevant to today for all of us.
And you have a long history with documentaries, biographical documentaries in particular. What excites you the most about the documentary genre? Is specifically now that there's so much access. I mean, there's so much access to them now. It's really exploded like never before.
What excites me? Everything, Denton. Absolutely everything. I have led the most privileged life in the world. The people I've sat down with and either interviewed or being part of the process or just spent time in their living room, as I mentioned with Sidney. the stories that I've heard, the moments that I will never forget of their personal journeys shared directly with me are profound. It's inspired me, and it's inspired me throughout this craft, this position as a producer, as a creator of these films. I look for one thing. I look to tell inspiring stories. I want to inspire the audiences around the world, and I want the subjects of these films to be recognized with their profound personal journeys, their challenges. They're not perfect, but their stories are human, and they are there for each and every one of us to learn from. And as I say, and I use this word often, to be inspired by.
And last question, the first Sidney Poitier movie I saw, my mom showed me when I was a kid, it was Patch of Blue. And so that one really always has stuck with me. What is your favorite Sidney Poitier movie?
Well, I mentioned To Serve with Love because that had such a, that was the beginning of the journey for me as an 11-year-old boy. But and I literally watched that every year, if not more than once.
Yeah.
But In the Heat of the Night is incredible for me as well. And of course, Norman Jewison, fellow Canadian, the director of that film. But I just absolutely love that movie. It stands up. And speaking about what an incredible time in cinema, 1967, if you think about it, we talk about To Serve with Love, we talk about In the Heat of the Night, and Guess Who's Coming for Dinner. All three movies in 1967. Look at America at the time. Look at the messages within that movie. Sidney Poitier front and center in each of those three movies. Who has ever done that before in the realm of global cinema, to be in those movies that are so strong, that are so representative of what's happening at times, and are, really a man that steps up and discards the shackles of racism and says, I'm here to tell this story. I'm going to tell this story as a human being.
Oh. Well, Derik, thank you for speaking with me today. I love this documentary. It's the life of one of Hollywood's greatest icons, and it's beautifully told. Congratulations and best of luck with everything moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Really appreciate your support on behalf of Reg and Oprah. Thank you for today.